Hi there, I'm Andre. I'm the CEO of Authentise. I'm also the chair for digital manufacturing at Singularity University. I spent about 10 years in the additive industry, and what I've learned in that time I want to share with you today, which is that the process of getting an idea to a part is very inefficient, but there are some solutions potentially to streamline that process. Now, the problem as I see it is that the transition of getting an idea to a part involves lots of different processes, lots of different software pieces, lots of different experience sets, and so forth. Here are just some of the examples of how fragmented that ecosystem is, but I'm sure in your own organization you have lots of experience in this matter, and you use lots of different software tools. I myself have seen organizations that are using more than 24 tools in the process of getting an idea into a part. Now, obviously, that needs to improve. And currently, the only option for those seeking to improve it and streamline this process seems to be the advertisement from large companies that are coming and saying, hey, we can solve this problem for you, but only if you only use our tools. So you need to exclusively use tools from one vendor, and then we can solve this problem for you because we can integrate those tools and we don't need to worry about third-party applications, and we can do it all for you anyway. That's what they're saying. Now, I doubt that very much. I've not seen a situation where a single vendor was able to stand up all the tools that are required to make the process happen. But even if they were, what would happen is that they would lock you in to their specific tool set. And it's very unlikely, almost impossible, that they are the leader in each of the tools required in that vertical. So effectively what they're doing to you is that they're locking you into a specific set of tools that is suboptimal. Right? And you don't have the option as the industry matures and the additive industry is still very much growing. You don't have the option of testing out new pieces of software because that would then break the seamless process that apparently you've just created. Now, this is the problem that we see today, and that the incumbent saying that they will provide a fully integrated solution seems to be the only option on the table. Now, the way we see it is that that's not true. It's not true because there's a lot of things happening in the industry that weren't happening 5 or 10 years ago. The first is that what the software tools that are being used are increasingly fragmented, or they're increasingly being split up into microservices. What that means is that the individual functionality of these tools, let's say a CAD tool has the ability to generate supports, orientation, heal the mesh, and so forth. The individual functions are being made available as a headless algorithm, like an API that can be addressed individually. This has multiple advantages. The first is that you can swap out one of these software pieces with another software piece at just a moment's notice, because all it requires is a new connection that can be relatively quickly written, and it doesn't require any training in interfaces because these tools are being addressed headlessly, right? But what it also means is that you can take these tools and integrate a variety of them into one common work stream and a few of them into another, and you can keep on experimenting with tools either built in-house or externally. Now, this splitting up of functionality that used to be wrapped in expensive software is one of the major changes that's happening in the industry today. We have this ability for a normal user to be able to access multiple different pieces of software that are able to serve just one functionality at a time. Authentise recognized this quite early on, and what we did is put these algorithms or these microservices together into a single platform. You can see here the tools that we have available today, all the way from geometric search to in-data processing of machine data. And there's many more aside. Now, these tools may be written by Authentise, or they may not be. In some cases, like mesh healing, we may have multiple parties providing the same functionality to you, so you can switch between any of the providers at any given moment. And of course, this is not the end of it. We're constantly addressing and innovating the number of tools and the range of tools that's available to you on this platform. And what that means to you is that as you are trying to bring an idea into fruition and make it a reality, you can use these tools at any point in the process. You can switch them out and say, okay, now I want to lightweight the object, so send it to a generative design tool. Or now I want to optimize the supports, and so send it to a tool that can do that, and so forth. So this interaction is now available to you. And what that means is you can have a set of tools that are the master in each of these process steps. Here are just some arbitrary ones listed, like additive flow, Siemens, Cura, or ANSYS. Or you can have another range of tools that come from different providers but do ostensibly the same thing. And what you no longer have to do is pay for an expensive license for each of these tools, because they can be paid for individually. And you don't need to learn the interface for each of these tools. You don't need to go to any more trainings for each of these tools, because they're being addressed individually via API. So the user doesn't have as much interaction with them anymore. Now, this is a dream. The dream is getting an idea into a part in a matter of seconds, because we can address all of these tools headlessly as we go along. In reality, we're still experimenting, and we're building this process step by step. What Authentise is already very good at is integrating tools that are being used once a geometry has been established. So we have the idea of a geometry, there's an initial CAD design, but we may not have supports, we may not have orientation and so forth, and we definitely don't have the final part, we definitely don't have production. So we're not really playing a big role in the design phase at the moment. We're more in the engineering, manufacturing engineering, as well as the production of the part. And for that, we've built a tool, a workflow tool that allows the user to interact with the process and integrate these additional third-party algorithms as they're going through the production. This is an end-to-end workflow management system that takes an order all the way from quoting to shipment. I'll just go through some of the functionality that this tool contains, just to give you an idea of what's going on. So firstly, as orders come in and you can upload them in a variety of ways, we can review the object in 2D and 3D. We can generate quotes and export those quotes. We can integrate with CAD tools. We can create a workflow that decides what's we have the ability to schedule either automatically or, as you see here, manually. We are giving you the option of integrating data from machines directly to update the order status, create traceability reports, and so forth. You're able to manage the maintenance of machines using the system, and as I said earlier, an app will be provided to the operator, so that on the shop floor they don't have to keep Authentise workflow management system. And what's exciting about it is that it's a one interface that integrates lots of different other tools inside of it. And I want to talk to you specifically about one feature that we're about to release. So this is a pre-show. You'll hear more about this at the end of the month. Essentially also allowing you to manage the pre-production workflow. So the steps that it takes to get the engineering sign-off for a design before the production commences. Each of these stages each of these processes will involve multiple stages, and some of them can be manual, can be, for example, a manager sign-off on a design. But some of them may also be third-party tools. Good example is maybe mesh healing, right? Mesh healing doesn't necessarily need to be done manually anymore, but if a fault is detected, should be done. Now you can integrate the algorithms that Authentise has already has on its platform to conduct that mesh healing operation, and you can do so automatically. So the process pre-production workflow will allow you to identify which of these steps that you're trying to execute are manual and which ones will be automated. And for the automated ones, you can then identify the algorithm that is to be used and the settings that that algorithm needs to be utilized under. Mesh healing is one example. There's also the idea, and we're working on this at the moment, of integrating CAD systems like Entopology. More on that to come. And there's a range of other tools that we've already got on Authentise's microservices platform that can be integrated. Quoting, for example. Authentise already has quoting inside it, but here you can generate a quote using a different tool. You can embed a serial number on the object using a watermarking algorithm, or you can search a database of existing designs and try and understand which designs are similar to the one that is currently being considered, so you can learn from that. All of these steps could be automated steps during the pre-production workflow, and you yourself can set up which of these algorithms you want to have integrated. You can decide who the provider for that algorithm should be. Should it be Siemens or maybe a startup that you've just heard about? And you can then determine what should be done with the results. So here you have the option of automating your workflow. Rather than having to go to each of these tools individually, you have a tool that can automate the workflow for you. Now, our experience is, of course, that there's a bit of an 80-20 rule. In 80% of cases, it makes complete sense to have this operation automated in Authentise. You don't need to spend a lot of extra time looking at the object again. But in some cases, you want to jump into the tool directly so that you can use some of the more detailed features to make last-minute edits or come up with a different number. So we found that most of the time the automation works. In some cases, you still need a button to be able to jump in. And for example, for CAD systems, Authentise is integrated with Siemens and Autodesk products. You can do that. You can jump from our tool directly into a CAD system, make some edits, and it syncs back with Authentise. But it's not only in the pre-production workflow that these microservices come to the fore. It's also in the the production and the post-production stages where you can benefit from integration with third-party algorithms. I'll give you two examples. The first, ADDIGURU is a company based in Louisiana, and what they do is they use images from the manufacturing process to identify potential areas of failure within a powder bed system, and they've just started with powder bed systems. So this is a great tool because previously the only software that OEMs provide to analyze visual data is a tool that requires the operator to click through every individual image to identify whether something potentially happened. Now, ADDIGURU uses artificial intelligence to identify those potential areas of failure and highlight them to the operator. Now, working with ADDIGURU, we're able to improve the process because it means two things. Firstly, we don't necessarily have to switch context anymore, right? Because ADDIGURU is a separate piece of software which requires you to buy a separate license and switch context as an operator between this tool and whatever other tools you're using. And also we can make the process of gathering data and uploading it to ADDIGURU easier. Let me explain exactly how that happens. Well, the first thing that we can do is immediately take out the need to switch contexts, right? Because we can alert the user within the Authentise interface that there is a problem detected by the ADDIGURU interface, so the ADDIGURU algorithm. So that's the first thing we can do. But we can go beyond that, because Authentise can also display what that error is in detail within the Authentise interface. So we can take some of the information from ADDIGURU and display it to you here. And more importantly, we can add to that data with the data that Authentise already has. For example, the live machine data with the sensor information. And we can give you an insight into not only the visual data that ADDIGURU analyzes, but also the sensor data that Authentise analyzes, and give you a complete mesh and a much more detailed overview. So you don't have to upload separate data to ADDIGURU, which if they could process or gather or process that data. Now all this information is being streamlined in together. That's another advantage of using a system, a platform that integrates third-party algorithms. So that's ADDIGURU. Now, nebumind is a really interesting software piece that uses machine data and the designs that you're trying to print to give you a insight into what the machine was doing while it was printing a particular feature of that object. It's really interesting because normally machine data is just a lot of rows of data, many different columns, many different rows, and it's really difficult for the layman to understand. But using this visualization technique, you can really understand here were problems with heat, here were problems with O2, whatever it is you're trying to figure out, this visualization really helps you. And again, right now, what this requires is for you to up back to computers to update the order anymore. We provide a full material genealogy, so you are able to track the performance of a material and the heritage of a material. That information flows into a traceability report for every part. Now, what the integration with nebumind allows you to do in Authentise is see that information within the Authentise context, but also requires you to upload much less information into nebumind. Previously, you would have to upload the machine data to nebumind, but also the original geometry to nebumind. Authentise holds both of those pieces of information already, so you don't need to upload them anymore. And you can get the information that nebumind produces directly back into the process, into Authentise. And effectively, what Authentise does is give you a tool that takes nearly a dozen steps out of the process for you, right? And what it ends up looking like is something like this, a tool that within the traceability report that Authentise generates, within the build report that Authentise generates, gives you much more detailed imagery, much more detailed visualizations produced by a third-party system. Authentise doesn't do this at the moment, but even if it did, it would give you the option of replacing it with images that you want to see, that you've chosen to work with. So that's the nebumind integration. And what both of these tools, and in fact the integration with third-party tools in the pre-production process give you, is that there are two different ways of paying for them. One is a tool that you might already have a license to. You can just start integrating it. The Authentise doesn't do anything extra. All we do is facilitate a more meaningful engagement with that tool without having to split context. And the second option is that if you don't want to buy that tool directly from the vendor because it requires you to onboard a new vendor or buy a new expensive license, you can use Authentise as an intermediary to buy that tool without an additional markup. And what's more interesting, at the same business model as Authentise currently charges, because that's also something we're seeing in the market, is that there are some organizations that charge per seat, some organizations that charge per part, some organizations that charge per machine. Lots of different business models, and it gets very confusing. Authentise is a one-stop shop. We charge based on the total volume of parts that are going through the system, and all of the software pieces that are contributing to that workflow will charge on the same basis. So there are lots of advantages of working with a third-party tool via a platform like Authentise. So just to summarize, what's happening? Firstly, the functionality that used to exist in a single software monolithic license is now being unbundled and is available for everybody to access individually. So these software, now that they're unbundled, it creates a much more competitive environment that allows third parties to compete for that individual functionality. And we're seeing a much greater ability for startups to come into the market and to provide just that sliver of value that you were looking for in areas like mesh healing or support or orientation. And thirdly, we're seeing that these individual modules can be grouped together and provided either to you as a third party. So they can be provided to you in a third party platform, or you can integrate those tools yourself. So much more flexibility for how to mix and match different pieces together. Okay, that's what's happening. And I think that this is important for the industry because, as I said right at the beginning, it takes way too long to get an idea into a part, and a big portion of that time is spent switching between different software tools, getting approvals, getting things wrong, and realizing later that you uploaded the wrong version, etc. And that's not it. Not only it, the software landscape around you is changing dramatically, right? The digital tools are advancing every single day, and especially in areas like additive, which is very unsettled, very immature market. We're only yet to see the rise of new providers that are providing cutting edge solutions that didn't exist before. ADDIGURU is a great example. It's less than a year old and is already doing things much better than the incumbents in the market before that. The second reason why you should care is that the operators that used to run your shop floor and that know that monolithic software inside out that used to be able to provide that value, well, those guys are disappearing, right? And now we need to fill those seats with other people that don't necessarily have that same level of training in a specific CAD system. So we need to be able to quickly onboard them with new tools. And it's easier and better to do that to onboard them with one tool rather than to try and onboard them with a dozen different tools at the same time. The third reason why we need to deal with this right now is that the time it takes to deliver real products to real people, it just takes too long. So the time it takes, for example, to get a new white good or kitchen appliance into the market is 18 months. We need to be able to give them those products faster. The customer is demanding instant gratification, and solving some of these software challenges is the best way to get there. The benefit to you is over time, there's lower cost, there's better tools because there's more competition between these microservices, and you don't have to get locked into a single vendor. So you're always going to be able to pick the tool that works best for you for whatever reason it does, right? And even if you don't use a tool like Authentise, there are various things you can do to get started today, right? Firstly, think about your principles. Jeff Bezos did this really well when he wrote the mandate. He just wrote a one-page summary that basically said anybody within Amazon that wants to provide a service needs to do so on a common API layer so that other parts of the service, other parts of Amazon can access it. That was the foundation for what is now AWS. It's the foundation for a lot of the success that Amazon has had. I want you to think in a similar way. Think about your principles when it comes to your digital environment. Say, for example, I want only to have tools that allow me to access their services via API. I want to create a competitive environment for software vendors within the value chain in which I operate. I want to have a common platform where all the data that is being generated by these various tools in the value chain is entered so that I am in control of whatever data comes together, and I'm easily able to access that data and work with it. Of course, principles don't act in isolation. So a great way to start with these principles is to test them on smaller problems. Identify an issue that arises. Maybe the tools that you're using are not very good at handling one specific functionality. I mean machining again, for example, and try and find vendors that are able to provide you with that specific sliver of service using an API, right? And then, of course, bring in the people that already serve you because you know them very well, and ask them, can you help me integrate these different packets of service together into one common framework? That's it from me. If you have any more questions, please contact me. This is a really important subject to me and to the industry as a whole, and I think will drive us all forward. Thank you very much. The information that is being used can be displayed in not only that traceability report, which essentially includes everything that ever happened to that part, including the material, the machine data, the operator inputs, but you can use that data also in powerful analytics tools, or really excitingly, not something I'm going to touch on too much today, you can bring that data out and allow the operators to interact with it in the way that they want. So using a no-code tool, they can generate their own dashboards, alerts, or reports. Now that's all steps of the process need to be followed, but also we can add work instructions to each of those steps so that the operator using an app can interact and provide feedback in manual stages of the process.